Most of us spend our days moving along an invisible grid. We wake up, we commute, we process tasks, and we repeat. It feels like the natural order of things because we've been trained to value the path that offers the least resistance. This is the minimum life. It is a subconscious agreement to trade our potential for a sense of security. We choose it because a predictable outcome, even a small one, provides a psychological buffer against the unknown. Our current systems thrive on this predictability. You receive a steady paycheck in exchange for showing up at a precise time, adhering to a predefined manual, and refusing to disrupt the status quo. But safety has a fixed ceiling. The creeping frustration you feel at the end of the week signals a mismatch between your narrow tasks and the raw capacity you still carry. You are living at a fraction of your bandwidth. To find the source of this limitation, we have to look back at the transition out of childhood, where we first learned to edit our expectations. When you were young, you believed in infinite possibilities. As you grew, society demanded you trade that imagination for a concept called realism. You were told that seeing the world for what it is meant accepting the limits others had already reached. Realism functions as a mechanism of control. It is a collection of inherited fears and economic excuses passed down until they feel like universal laws. Adopting this fear-based realism leads to a specific type of exhaustion. You work harder and faster, but you're running on a treadmill. You have plenty of motion, but zero direction. Applying effort to a flawed narrative only creates more noise. Escaping the minimum life requires you to step back and re-examine the operating system you use to interpret the world. Breaking the cycle starts with a single realization. Your internal narrative constructs your external reality. Perception is the engine processing raw information, market shifts or setbacks, determining the reality built on the other side. Faced with identical data, one processes a dip as stagnation and pulls back. The other identifies a pricing error, moving forward. The person on the compounding curve has trained their perception to look for specific variables that others ignore. They recognize that a crisis is often just a reshuffling of the deck, and they look for the new winning hand, while everyone else is still mourning the old one. Changing your life's trajectory depends on upgrading this engine. When you change how you process the data, you start to see opportunities for progress where you previously saw only obstacles. Once you upgrade your perception, you can begin to use it as a tool in your professional and social circles. We live in an era that demands constant hustle and 24/7 visibility. But when you are always available and always predictable, your value begins to depreciate. You become a background noise that the system takes for granted. Intentional absence creates a different dynamic. When you step back and refuse to be consumed casually, you create a vacuum. This silence forces others to reevaluate your role and increases their curiosity about your next move. Scarcity recalibrates how the world perceives your worth. Strategic silence allows you to position yourself as a rare resource rather than a common commodity. Any attempt to disrupt the status quo will be met with the word impossible, but this is rarely a statement of fact. Usually, it's just a way for people in power to protect their own comfort by discouraging challengers. The MAD mentality is the strategy of treating short-term failure as a mapping tool. Look at this logic tree. Each time you hit a barrier, you mark the failure point, gather the data, and immediately recalculate a new path. This kind of endurance changes the nature of the game. If you refuse to quit, the superior opponent or the rigid system eventually begins to make unforced errors under the constant pressure of your persistence. True persistence is a calculated process. It is the act of turning every systemic rejection into a piece of information that helps you map a clear route to your objective. As you move past these systemic barriers, the objective of your work begins to shift. You have to redefine what wealth actually means. It isn't about luxury cars or conspicuous consumption. Those are just different ways of staying trapped in a cycle of seeking approval. The highest form of wealth is total autonomy. It is the ability to own your schedule, choose the people you work with, and decide which problems are worth your time to solve. Money is a tool used to buy back your freedom. When you have autonomy, you are no longer a cog in someone else's machine. You are the one who decides where the machine goes. Achieving this autonomy triggers a final internal shift. You move from being an observer of the world to someone responsible for changing it. This is the moment you become a catalyst. You stop simply learning how the system works, and you start deciding how it should work. The mandate is to use your clarity to disrupt the limitations that keep others trapped. You speak up to challenge the narratives that force people to live smaller lives than they were meant for. Consider these questions carefully. What beliefs are you currently protecting because they excuse your lack of progress? And if your perception is the system that runs your life, who did you allow to install it? This is where the long road out of the minimum life begins. It requires you to sit in the discomfort of your own thoughts until you are ready to choose autonomy over predictability.